Tammy, are you ready to start our meeting, please?
Ka pai. Morena koutou, morena kai kaini hera o kirikiri roa, e te manu kāwhe tēnei te mihi atu kia koe. Ki ngā mema o te kauni hera ku tūhono mā te rorohiko, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou. Kaha nei ki te mahi, ngā mahi mo te taone rangatira o kirikiri roa. Nō reire e tātua kaharoa koe nei mātou tuku whakamoe me ti kia koe kia pā mai tā aroha ki rungi a mātou katoa me te hāpori, me mai hara mai ki te kōrero i ngā kaupapa. Arahi mātou i rungi te rangi mārie me te tika ke hore e kōtiti te waka i roto i ngā mahi o tō rangapu. Ko koe tau mātou whiringa, ko koe tau mātou tokatū moana, anei mātou whakawhetā i rungi te ingo tō mātou kaipapahora. O ate ate.
Amen.
Amen. Tēnā koutou.
Thank you so much. Morena tātou. Good morning, everyone. We will start our meeting, and no one's to make any commentary whatsoever about how long it's going to last. Okay, so we'll start with the apologies. I think I've got partial apologies for partial attendance from Mark Bunting. It says, no, we'll remove those. You're going to be wholly here. Oh.
But how long the meeting would be?
That would be good. Councillor Donovan.
2 p.m.
Yep.
2 p.m. All right, thank you. I move that the apology be accepted. All in.
Sorry, I had 4 p.m. as well, but Mark might not need to.
Yeah, I don't think we need to put apologies in for 4 p.m. at this time. If we do, we will later. All right. All right. I've moved. Keisha seconded. All in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Carried unanimously.
The agenda is as confirmed.
Can I ask a question before we confirm the agenda? And that is, I'm surprised at how few submitters we have in the public forum today. And I'm just asking whether or not we actively encouraged, particularly those who have got written submissions in Appendix 1, whether we actively encourage those submitters as well as others to present today in person.
I don't think we actively encourage anyone at any time, but the opportunity is there and it's quite clear and plain that they can.
Well, there is usually a question asked in the Have Your Say document, which says, do you wish to present in person?
Exactly.
Now, I don't believe that was on this one.
Was it not?
Generally speaking, that the question you're referring to is what's included when we hold a hearing, and we put the hearing date in here. This one, there is no hearing, but we have been advertising this on our website and our notice of meetings, making sure the agenda went out within the normal notice period that had the link to public forum as well. And anybody that's contacted us, we've made sure to say you're more than welcome to speak to it. We can do it on Zoom, or you can attend in person. So we've tried all of our normal methods.
So there's been no discouragement of not suggesting that people don't come in and present if they wish to do so.
Nothing that any of the governance team has been a part of.
Do that.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm sorry I've only got a green screen, so I can't see who's got their hand up for discussion, but I think Councillor Bunting has.
Good morning. Yes, my question is similar to Councillor Rob's. I was surprised. I saw some commentary in here about how the public forum would only be 30 minutes anyway, and I granted we've only got a few anyway, but is that normal to do that?
That is the wording that is in every agenda.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Well, you learn something every day. Thank you.
Being given discretion and democracy, so it wouldn't have been a hard and fast at all. But as it goes, we only had one person who wanted to submit, and they are yet not here. So I've confirmed the agenda. Have I moved? Move it. I'll move. Sarah will second, just because I looked at it. All in favour? That's how it's going to roll. If I look at you, no.
Carried
Okay.
unanimously.
Are there any declarations of interest in any way? There being none, we'll move on. Public forum, we've just discussed. And we had one, but he's not here, so unless he turns up shortly, it's probably going to be a little late. Okay, three board, so we're into the item itself, which is item number 5. And Andrew will come forward to tell us what we're working on today. I haven't yet moved the staff recommendation, though I might, subject to the discussion. But I am moving an additional motion in terms of myself and the chair, or depending when the submissions to select committee are, the mayor and the chair of infrastructure being the presenters to select committee. So that, just so you know, that's coming up in the spirit of no surprises. Okay, excellent. Now, Andrew, because there's such a massive information that we've received, it's quite complex. It's always been quite complex, actually, but it's massive. Today, the government has put the bill forward, which talks of the 4 entities. Right, so what's within scope of our discussion today or discussion for another day? Because I understand there's likely to be another bill, maybe 2. Could you just step us through what it is, where our boundaries are in terms of what we need to cover off today and later?
Sure. So I've got an introduction which I'll go through as well, but just to respond to your request first, this bill is one of at least 2, potentially 3 bills. So this bill only establishes the governance and the overarching structure for the government proposal. The Bill 2, which I believe is coming out later this year, potentially around October, establishes the detail around financials and process matters around transitional arrangements. And Bill 3, which either stands alone or could potentially become merged into Bill 2, deals with the economic regulation elements. So today's really just about the primary bill, where the government's proposing to establish 4 entities, and then the governance arrangements that sit over the top of that and the structural arrangements that sit around that. That's the document that's essentially with the Select Committee at the moment.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that? I just want us all to be on the same page in terms of the conversation that comes up. But, you know, as we go through it, it may become more clear anyway. So, Andrew, please.
Thank you. So I've written an introduction, so I'll read it because I didn't want to miss anything out. So, good morning, Mayor and Councillors. I'm here today to report back following the 15 June resolution of Council, where the Council submission timeframes, the process and the consultation were all approved. And I do realise that the combined report and its attachments are over 4,000 pages, but I note that the bulk of the material is the verbatim submission content, and on the basis that EM should have access to all information as part of today's discussions and decisions we've included in the report. But to help make your job a lot easier, we've kept the staff report, the cover report, really short at only around 3 pages, and we've provided 2 Nielsen summary documents, one for the general survey and one for the representative survey. So they're actually pretty good and comprehensive summary documents. But the verbal submission, the verbatim submissions are all there should councillors wish to refer to them or look at them. And in fact, outside of the agenda timeframe, all the submission-related material and the Nielsen summary were provided on Friday last week, which met the timeframes that we had all agreed at the start of the process. But it is a large pack of information. The staff recommendation in relation to the 2 surveys and the 2 Nielsen summary documents is to receive them and then include those in the overarching HCC submission to the Select Committee. That's the proposal today, so that government and the Select Committee can get to see the views of our community. If I move to the draft HCC Select Committee submission itself, that's on page 56 in Diligent. It is also relatively short, simply because based on council and elected member feedback to date, the draft submission's been prepared on the basis that we strongly oppose the bill as council's core success factors have not been addressed. And these we've discussed on numerous occasions, and they relate to community consultation, local voice and representation, rights of ownership, placemaking, and alignment with other government reforms. So the draft submission that we've put forward to you today is simply seeking that the bill is withdrawn. Now, I'd note that Council has previously submitted at every opportunity to shape this reform as it's developed, and Council's previous submissions have suggested alternatives to the government model, including improved representation arrangements, CCO models, sub-regional aggregation. The government has not moved from its core position, and our submission is only about the government's proposal, the bill, which creates the 4 publicly owned entities. So in light of Council's position and the government direction, Council's only position is to oppose the bill in full, which is the tone of the submission today. However, in the event that the government proceeds regardless, my view and recommendation to Council is it would be irresponsible not to have a view on the draft bill. So we've also appended to the submission a technical clause-by-clause change request that would sit alongside the main Council submission. But as I explained earlier, this bill is simply one of 2, potentially 3 other bills that are yet to come. And this bill doesn't cover financials or any details in relation to the transition. It does cover some transition matters, but instead this bill simply focuses on the governance and structural arrangements to create a 4-entity model. So I'm happy to stop at this point and take questions. It might even be useful, just as a suggestion, that to take questions on the public engagement part separate to the submission, but that's just a suggestion, and
Yeah,
I'm
let's
happy
do
to
that.
take direction from the Council.
Let's do that, just to keep those parts discreet. Councillors online, did you hear that? So we will talk about the public engagement side, and then we'll go back, then we'll talk a little bit more on the submission, and any other matters that come up as well. But so I have a question to kick off, and I'd really love to be able to see the list. Yeah. Yeah, I've got a green screen instead of, so I won't be able to vote like that either. Oh, okay, cool. Excellent. Question. So all public submissions, and I read the analysis, I also read the individual commentaries and submissions, which as you quite rightly say, was a bit of an effort. And that has been government's timeline and timeframe, and allowing extra time within the very silly short amount of time we had, isn't it? That's why we've had to face that incredible burden to read all of the 4,000 submissions, etc.
I don't think the timeline has triggered the 4,000 pages or 1,200 submissions. I think the community has some strong views, and they've now elected to articulate those views. The time pressure came for the staff to turn the analysis around quickly.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. But the overall time frame for submission was really set down by government, the whole process in terms of when we had to get back to the select committee, etc.
Yeah, the
Right.
deadlines are set by government.
So that's I think that was the point I was asking. In terms of the public having confidence that everything they said will be heard, what you're going to do is send every submission in a package to government, unfettered, uninterfered with,
Yes,
and the assessment from the professional company Nielsen,
yes,
and the staff assessment of the rest as well.
yes, that's correct.
So there will be no. They'll go pure. That feedback will go pure to government.
Yeah, correct. I think, the reason we're proposing that is because I believe some of the members in the select committee might not have had a deep dive on the bill before, because it's a cross-party select committee, and so it's a great opportunity for us to restate our previous commentary and views of the community in full, and bring that whole select committee up to speed with the overall HCC view.
So when you say cross-party, in terms of who will hear this at the end, it's the two major parties and minor parties as well.
Yeah, I'm not completely familiar with the composition of the select committee, but it is a cross-party committee.
Would
I
we
can
be able
find
to-
out for
Would we
you.
be able to find that out,
Yeah.
please? That would be very useful. Any other questions, Councillor Pascoe?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've only got one question on the submissions, but a number of questions on the submission, which I'll hold over until we get to
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
But one question I had on the submissions, in reading them, I noticed that there was quite a large number, and some, but probably larger than some, submissions that had the same answer to each question. And I just wonder if that was as the submitter intended, or whether that was a system issue in terms of how we ended up with those being reported.
I'll refer to our system expert. Is that Tegan to answer that question, or Nigel? Tegan. Have council met Tegan before?
No, I haven't.
I
So,
have.
so Tegan works in our strategy team. We'll probably do a disservice with her introduction here, but she works in our strategy team. She comes with a PhD and is expert in these survey matters. So Tegan, over to you.
Thank you for that.
So is there a question for Megan?
Tegan?
Tegan, sorry.
Could I perhaps ask if she came up here so then these guys could see?
Yep, you can come and sit next to Andrew for this part of the discussion. Thank you and welcome again. It's really awesome to have somebody of your capacity and experience on staff, so thank you.
Hi and welcome. To answer the question, I am unsure. I believe that would be what the submitter intended. We have seen in previous submissions on other platforms, such as Have Your Say, that someone will copy and paste the same answer into each text box available. But I can't be sure that that's the case, and we can go back to Nielsen and double check that if you would like.
I just thought that, you know, if I'd seen one or two of them, it would have been, but there were quite a large number, I didn't count them, but there were quite a large number of the same answer under a different question. And it looked like it was a cut and paste. And it just looked like, you know, maybe it might be worth tidying up if we've got a chance to do so. But I know we've only got till Friday, haven't we, to get our submission in. It's not a major, but I just thought it would be an area that might be worth tidying up, particularly if the submitter gets upset with the way that his or her submission has ended up with the select committee.
Yeah, I think it's finding a balance, isn't it, between sending them as they actually came in, just pure. But I understand, because actually it did speed up my personal reading a little bit, because I could.
Yeah,
that one's the same.
Mine too.
So you know.
There was an upside to
blessing.
it, Mayor Paula.
Small blessing. Okay, thank you.
That's the only question I've got on
Thanks,
the
Councillor
on the
Pascoe. Councillor
submissions.
Bunting?
Thank you, Mayor Southgate. Look, a couple of quick questions. We only ended up with about, was it 200 and something submissions, wasn't it, in our thingy that we sent out, wasn't it? There was the Nielsen one, which had a bigger sample size, and our one. Do you know?
So they were both run through Nielsen.
Yeah, sorry. beg
And there was a
pardon,
general survey where anyone could go in, and then there was a representative survey from the electoral roll. The total was about 12. I'll let Tegan answer with the numbers, actually.
I don't have.
Nigel has the numbers.
So, the representative survey had 709 responses.
Yep.
And the general survey, as you refer to it, sort of our survey.
Yes.
The wider survey had 550.
500. Okay, cool, thanks.
Sorry, I'll just repeat that for people online, if I may. So the representative survey had 709 submissions, and the general survey had 550 submissions.
Okay, thank you, cool. And look, notwithstanding it was a tight time frame, which I appreciate. Do you think our one, what was the name of the second one, sorry, Nigel? The general one.
Yeah.
It was a pretty, there were a lot of questions to answer before you got to your general thoughts on the thing. Do you think that some people saw that and just could have just gone, this is just too hard? Like, was it suitable and appropriate to such a tight time frame?
I can't answer the question. I would make a comment. I think it was a pretty good return rate when you consider other things the city's consulted on in the past. So by sheer number of responses, it's right up there in terms of return rate.
Right.
So I'm not sure, but I can't, the specifics around do people give up before the end, I don't know. Would we have data on that?
Nielsen would have data, and there was more in the general survey that gave up.
Yeah.
But most people that started it did actually finish it.
Yep.
With the general survey, there was only 6 questions. They were all open-ended questions. So there was one for each of the 4 areas.
Yep.
And there was also a question on privatisation, and then there was overall thoughts.
Right.
So that's how I've got that 6. And so they were all open-ended questions,
Yep.
which did mean that people could answer with their initial thoughts in that first text box, and some people did do that. They just kind of said, this is what I want to say, and they all put it in that first text box, which may not have been the right place to comment on.
Well, some of them copied it and put it in all of them, didn't they?
Yes, exactly. So,
Yeah. Okay. And so we are only today assessing these 2 pieces of research, right? We're not not talking about anything we saw on the general Facebook comments from the council webpage or on council page or anything like that.
What we're proposing to do is to pass all of the results from these 2 surveys,
Yep.
plus the 2 pieces of Nielsen analysis,
Yeah.
directly through to the select committee.
All right.
That's what we're proposing to do.
And I think that's an interesting question to explore a bit more though.
Yeah,
Mark, because
if you don't mind,
Yeah.
is there an opportunity? Because there was some, I mean, yes, of course you're going to get echo chambers in those things, but I'm trying to frame this as a question before if you'll just
No, I'll
give me a bit of space
I
here.
know where you're going. It's good.
Yeah, I noticed that at a similar time that we were getting hammered on our Facebook page, we were putting out press releases saying it's 50-50.
Yeah.
And that seemed to fire up people a little bit more. So I just wonder if there's a way of including general dialogue in our submission, or would that be unuseful?
So just an interesting point. I hear the question.
Carry on, yeah.
And sorry, I'm not trying to, but I because I've said that, and we've all said that, elected members in previous times, we get a lot of feedback through other mechanisms, but my understanding is for it to be a formal submission, it needs to be exactly that, and Facebook commentary on residents' pages or even our own page or our post on isn't considered a formal submission, is it? So it's hard to extrapolate that, or is that not right?
I think
Or can we? Because I think that's the question that Mark is saying.
Yeah.
Well, I think my simple view is it's a council submission, so you can do what you like.
Right.
But I think that these are practical challenges around, well, whose Facebook account do you take comments from, and what happens if you miss one, and it's our submission. If you want to include these other things in it, then we can.
I guess the reason I'm thinking is that look, the people who are going to be reading this are human just like us.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to get to is that, even screenshots of the entirety, so to be fair, so you get the positives and the negatives, even if it was just added as an attachment, might be useful, because this is the kind of thing that these people, i.e. the politicians at the other end, are going to look at.
Yeah.
So, but my worry is, would it detract from the work we've done here?
It would be hard. Would it be harder to try and extrapolate a meaningful social analysis of a and it's a topic for a bigger situation too, because we've often talked about how we get our intelligence about how people feel, which is not necessarily in these formal mechanisms, but it's through. But it's really hard to quantify the.
If you were to go down
data,
this
wouldn't it?
path, which is fine, I think you'd probably want to, this is us off the cuff, you'd probably want to do it by way of, here's an example of some of the things, because you'll never know where to look across social media to grab everything, that's all. And
all I was suggesting is that I think we've gone about 2 or 3 times we've mentioned this in the time that we've had this out.
Yeah.
So we could actually just simply put as an attachment a screenshot of all the Facebook comments, that came in at the same time concurrently.
On
with
our
this.
page?
On the
or
council
where?
page?
On the council page,
Yeah.
not on our own, because I think
I
that would
think
just be
that would-
political,
I'll
but,
just-
you know, on the council page.
I'm just looking at Nigel.
Well, let's, Julie's here too, let's come back to that, because I
Sure.
do think it's a good point, because we quite often,
Can-
but I think there are some rules around what constitutes submission and not.
Yeah.
But in terms of a package of information,
That's it, because
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah.
and trying to make this a question without
Julie, do you have the
debating.
answer to that?
You can't, Julie.
Yes, I understand we can extract all the commentary from that have been posted onto our Facebook page and list those. A couple of challenges. One is people have posted that as a person, and they may not be expecting someone to pick it up and provide it to someone else. So there's
I
a
would
bit of a
dispute
privacy
that
issue
pretty
there.
strongly. It's
Yep, so
public,
that's a
yes.
bit problematic, because if we're posting them verbatim,
Yeah.
that's very difficult. We can't protect people's privacy. And in people's social media comments, they often put identifying things. You know, I live in this street or in this area.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a big challenge. The other thing is in terms of analysing those, to see what the theme of that is. Ideally, we should go back to Nielsen and ask them to do that, because they have done the analysis of the two surveys.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying very, very hard here to say, let's not sanitise it. And we can caveat everything, we can redact like no one else. It's not that hard.
Okay, so you made your point, and I guess when we come to debating that.
Yeah.
So just reflect how, the question is genuinely, what can we derive from social media and share with government?
Yeah,
It's a
I
legitimate
think so.
question, so let's just have a think about that, because there's more discussion to come.
Thank
Alright,
you. That's-
Keep me up to
Thank
that
you.
when you want to come back to it.
Thank you. Yep.
Mark.
That's all
Okay,
from my side.
If I may, I do have a response to your question around the composition of the select committee.
excellent, thank you. That was quick.
Well, I've got a team on text. So there's 6 Labor members, which includes the chair.
Who's the chair again?
Goodness.
Oh, no, sorry.
3 from the National Party, 1 from the ACT Party, 1 from the Green Party. That is the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee. So, yeah, so 6 Labor, including chair, 3 National, 1 ACT, 1 Greens Party.
Okay. Thank you. And if you know who the chair is, just come back to me on that one, please. Just out of interest. Huh? Oh, Barbara Edmonds. Okay, thank you. Got it. Excellent. All right, so we're now going to take questions on
Welcome to government.
on the submission. Do you have anything more to say? Oh, sorry, Kesh.
Before you move on.
Yeah.
Andrew, I completely understand why we're attaching everything from the public and so forth. I'm just thinking about the other side. I mean, if we found it a struggle to get through all of that, what are the chances that anyone else would look at it?
So it's simply my recommendation, we should pass it all through to send the strongest possible message.
Yeah.
But if council only wishes to send the summary from Nielsen, that's perfectly fine. It's a council decision.
Yeah.
So I'm just here to reflect the wishes that, my advice is we should send the whole lot. But if you wish to do something different,
And is that just to add weight to it? Like,
Yeah.
what is the...
Yeah. Because I don't think, because one of the things this council's been pushing for is consultation, right?
Yeah.
And one of the benefits of this consultation round is it is genuinely representative. You know, it's got a margin of error of 4%. So it has, I think, quite a lot of value in terms of capturing a true cross-section of our society. And so while that's not New Zealand Inc., it's Hamilton, and this is all about, our submission's all about Hamilton and its views. So I'm an advocate for passing it through, but I'm happy to be instructed otherwise.
No, I'm totally, thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
And just on that same theme, I'd also be interested in the answer that Mark, the question that Mark posed in terms of
The social, yeah.
social
Yeah.
feedback. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it was a good question, and it actually comes up in other topics as well. And it's something for Local Government New Zealand to consider, to be honest. Tegan, you might have some views at some stage as a social scientist. How do we wrap up the way that people talk with us, you know, because the world has changed, isn't it, in terms of how people engage with us. We had to talk about something. Maxine, thank you.
Thank you. I'll make it really quick because you do want to move on to the other parts of the discussion today. Just with regard to privacy, Andrew, were we really clear with people that we would be passing on their individual feedback to council through to the government select committee?
Tegan?
Yes, in both of the separate surveys, we had privacy statements that covered exactly what would be passed on to the select committee.
Thank you, Tegan. And that wasn't something that was on the Facebook posts?
No.
That privacy statement?
No.
Ellie?
No, no.
Okay, so
Okay, and that's where the challenge perhaps is. I guess from anybody that may have read those comments from council, you know, Andrew or Tegan, in terms of adding anything to what is already been fed back to us through the other surveys, is there anything that additional value that those Facebook comments could offer?
I defer to the expert.
In my experience, we often look at some of the Facebook comments that for a consultation that is run on Have Your Say. We didn't in this case because it was run through Nielsen. It was independent, but in the typical case where we would run our own consultation through Have Your Say and we would post about it on our Facebook page, looking at those comments doesn't, the themes are very much the same, and we find that the results kind of look very similar between the Facebook comments and what people's formal submissions actually say. So there's high correlation between kind of what people are saying on both.
Right, yeah, I suspected that. Thank you, Chair.
thank you. Any further questions or concern or questions on engagement? If not, we'll go into the submission. Are you going to lead us into this, Andrew? Or are you...
No, I'm happy to go straight to questions on the
Okay.
submission.
Okay,
If
who's the
that's,
starter for 10 questions? Councillor
okay.
Pascoe.
Yeah, I've got a number of questions, so I'm happy if you want to shut me down partway through and allow me and allow me to come back in a little later. Andrew, you mentioned in your presentation that our submission is around the withdrawal of the bill.
Yeah.
But you've also said that thus far the minister has been pretty fixed in her mind that this is the bill and this is what the outcome that she wants. Do you think that the submission now should also consider the option that in the event that the government does not withdraw the bill, here are a list of things that we would like, Hamilton City Council would like to have as changes to the bill? Rather than, you know, we want the bill withdrawn. If you don't withdraw it, well, we're kind of left high and dry because we haven't really told them what changes they could make that might be acceptable to us.
It's a really good question, and it's something that we've really debated as a team. It's really quite difficult. So let me explain why I think it's difficult. So the government's bottom line is a four-entity model, which is something we've never seen before in this country in relation to this type of service provision. And so for that reason, the bill in itself is bespoke. If you contrast that, the counterfactual CCO, so CCO is a known model. You know, there's known legislative provisions around that. You don't have to invent much in relation to a CCO model. But in terms of this model here, because of its newness and uniqueness, this bill is an artefact of only this model. So in terms of your question, could you submit to tweak the bill? my conclusion in talking to the likes of Stephen Halliwell and others is it's really not tweakable. It's a withdrawal and start again type bill, and hence that's the thrust of the submission. And so what we've done, though, to partly respond to your issue, is we've included the previous submissions we've made, which raises all of our issues that we're seeking to address. So they're not lost. So the proposals, we've simply attached those. So, including the CCO model, they're all in those previous submissions, so they would all form part of the pack that's supplied. But it's very difficult to actually go through clause by clause and amend the bill to achieve those alternative outcomes. So I know that's probably a bit of a long answer, but we have had some real debates about that. And I think the conclusion is it's such a bespoke arrangement, it's a withdraw and start again. So hence the thrust of the submission.
So given that it is a bespoke, and I know that we've never had an entity, the entity that they're creating is something that we've never had as a legal structure in New Zealand before. Given that it is bespoke, and given that we have submitted a large number of questions to the DIA, and I think according to the question I asked at the last meeting with Stephen, some of those questions go back to November of last year that we still haven't had answers for. Is it not a worry, and isn't it perhaps a good reason to include in the submission a concern that perhaps the government doesn't know quite how this bespoke entity will actually come into existence and operate? Because, if you had a question about a company or a body corporate or whatever other corporation, which is ACC, if you had those questions, there would be precedents out there that would answer many of the questions that we've submitted and haven't had answered yet.
Look, and I'm concerned because I can't answer your questions, but the unhelpful answer is the detail's going to have to land in Bill 2. So the limited understanding I have of Bill 2, I haven't seen any advanced copy, but it has to deal with these things. Bill 2 is the technical implementation bill when that comes.
But we may have well gone past the point of no return with Bill 1. So Bill 2
agree with you.
Might be ticking a whole lot of boxes because we can't turn around and go back.
I completely agree with you. Hence, staff recommendation is the bill be rescinded.
Yeah, okay. What else have I got here? Yeah, the earlier submissions, and look, I've tried to get through, I've spent most of my time reading the submissions from the public rather than our earlier submissions.
Yeah.
But in the earlier submissions, did we cover off, when we looked at alternative ownership models, did we refer to just not the CCO model, but how models were working in the likes of Tasmania and Victoria, who we've had some dialogue with on this journey as to how they got to where they are, and that they are working in this water environment in a country that's quite similar in terms of culture and law to us?
So not sure if Stephen Halliwell's online. I know he was, and he had extremely limited availability, but if he's there, he might want to pop in.
He does seem to be there.
But just while he comes up, we definitely raised those alternatives at a high level in previous submissions. We definitely did. And we were hoping that would then open the door to a detailed discussion on those proposals. But Stephen, is there anything you wish to add to the answer?
No, I think we did briefly cover them. I think we focused on the CCO model in those last submissions, but I don't think I have much more to add than what you've just said.
Thank you, Stephen.
Do you think in terms of who's going to read what, we should be bringing some of those specific areas forward? I know you're focusing the submission on rejecting the bill, but you know, do you think that we should add a page or two onto our submission of particular areas where we would like the select committee to sort of focus on? Because if we're submitting 4,000 pages, goodness knows what other councils will be submitting in terms of the volume of paper for these. What have we got? We've got 11 people to, no, we've got 11 people to read.
So at the risk of, I think it would be more impactful. So the submission is only really 3 pages and it's rescind. It's pretty hard hitting. I think to start to introduce open, alternatives, I think my view, and again, I'll be led by council, but I think it degrades your position.
If we put too much detail in.
I think also, though, you raise a really good point, and what we haven't focused on for today is how the submission is delivered and spoken to in the select committee, and I think that's where some of your matters could be picked up in terms of the key highlights that we make in the spoken submission.
Right, okay. Yeah. That probably. Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. In the detailed submission, the analysis of the clause by clause stuff, I'm looking at page 15 of the document. I don't have the full agenda to know what page number that is. And just as an example, we talk about the shares and rights of ownership, and talk about the shares not carrying any rights of ownership. And then we go on and talk about the unorthodox model. And then we go on and talk about our preference for the CCO model. So I think some of your concerns, Councillor Rob, about the unanswered questions and the fact that the bespoke model isn't working for us, and that we prefer the CCO model, it is reflected over and over again in statements like that in the detailed submission.
Okay, thank you. And perhaps the last question, or the second to last question, I thank Sarah for sending the members of the select committee. And I'm not sure what the protocols are here, but I know before we have a deliberations process, we often get rung by submitters with their view and perhaps doing one-on-one caucusing with us. Is that an appropriate option for us? I notice our closest MP is Andrew Bailey from Port Waikato, who is on that committee, but there's also a member from New Plymouth who's affected by also by Entity 2. Whether or not we should have some one-on-ones with at least one of those MPs so that we can get our message across, because I think when you go to the select committee, it'll be like coming in here. You know, you'll get 5 minutes if you're lucky, but more likely only 3, and no time for questions. And I just wonder if, if it's possible to do that, and 2, whether or not we shouldn't put some effort in from a political perspective to get Andrew Bailey here, give him some of our views of those things that Stephen's mentioned that we might otherwise not have time to get through in the select committee presentation.
You could try. I mean, political influence was a great suggestion. But just as Nigel's just reminded, we did specifically talk about the Tasmanian models and other Australian models in our previous submissions. So we're going to restate that back to the select committee. But political lobbying seems sensible.
Okay, and last question then. I see no one else is up on the board there, but last question, political oversight on the draft submission. That's really a question to you, Mayor Paula. Do you feel that we've had, I mean, I only got this, sort of last week, and it was updated yesterday, and look, I think it's a really good submission, but do you think we should have some political influence in terms of what changes we might want to make here, given, I think, Andrew's concerns being similar to some of the questions that I've raised in terms of what we should include and what we shouldn't include, given our wish to expedite and get
Yeah.
the most political miles that we can out of our submission.
So absolutely we should. We have been throughout the whole process, and I was recently with Blair and a number of others with Minister Robertson, talking about infrastructure funding, which of course is a critical part of this, Rob. I mean, a lot of the infrastructure we're facing is Three Waters infrastructure and roads and stuff. And we did lay this on the table right there with Minister Robertson at that time when we were making commentary about the ability to fund or otherwise future. And so, yes, I agree. In terms of, so I'm in the hands of council. I'm here to convey to government the democratic majority decision of this council, and happy to do that. I am suggesting that Councillor O'Leary, depending when the Select Committee hears us, I'm suggesting that Chair of Infrastructure and the Mayor, whomever that may be at the time, present in person to the Select Committee. And of course, all other elected members can, because these are open process, can be there to observe or in any capacity to make sure that we are representing fairly and squarely. So I'm happy to take advice from council who they would most like me to lean on in a political sense. I guess there's politics going on all around this, with people talking to various different people, depending on their political persuasions. But yeah, more than happy to do that. I mean, you know, it's a political issue. It's a political issue. Always has been. Just a question, and in terms of the Tasmanian model, I think Rob and I sat on a really interesting webinar, Zoom, something. There were hundreds of those, but they did invite the Tasmanian model came to that table. And there were a lot of questions, weren't there, from local government. It seemed to be a model with different aspects that would be worth exploring. Because it's a completely different asset holding model, for example, isn't it?
But if I go back to the government process, so they went through a process of talking about different models and getting feedback. Then they went through LGNZ and had an 8-week, tell us what you think period.
They've rejected all that, yeah.
Then they set up a governance and accountability working group. But at that time, with a bottom line of only 4 entities, the model, and then the governance accountability working group came out with, the recommendations they came out with. And so, the fence has just been progressively closed down to this bill as only a 4-entity model bill. There is no other proposal on the table from government.
Yeah, which begs the question whether what we could have done earlier to propose different models. We did propose quite a few different suggestions, the CCO and others. Just a question from me, in terms of Rob's points that he made in the questions around referring back to the body of ideas that we have tried to talk with government and have in fact talked with government over the last 2 years. Can we make stronger cross-reference? I know you're going to attach them and as a package. Can we actually make stronger cross-reference in this submission to pertinent parts of previous feedback, vis-a-vis like the CCO is one thing, so we can actually alert them to that we're not going to go down that path again, but here is the part we want you to pay attention to from our previous submission?
Absolutely.
Because I don't know how other members feel. I feel that would be useful. Nobody's not nodding, so I'm hoping that's...
Sorry, back a wee bit.
Pardon?
I just need to know what I was nodding at.
Nodding that we make cross-reference to our previous submissions and points made in it. That's pretty much it.
Stand by my nod.
So he's nodding again, so it's good. Nods are good at the moment. Okay. Any other questions, councillors? Otherwise, we're going to go into debate.
Sorry, just one question. That around the attaching, there's a lot of whirring and buzzing around the attaching of screenshots of general comment. I'm really quite in favour of that. Even
Julie,
if we
can we have you just make a final comment? Oh, well, we have to make a determination. Maybe Sean can also help. can it be done? We've all agreed that we're not hiding any feedback from the public at all. We're not sanitising or hiding any aspect of feedback. In terms of the legitimate potential barriers of privacy or whatever, how can that be addressed? Or can it be addressed and can it be done?
Yes, so we can provide all of the screenshots of what people have said, including all the threads off their threads. As Nigel's pointed out to me, people have posted that on a public forum, so it is public already. It's just what they may not be aware of is that you are going to take that information and provide it to someone else. But if you post it on a public forum, that's always liable to happen.
And I think there's a simple way around that, and that is just to caveat that as we attach it and say, look, this is, not a formal part of the submission, but this is what we're...
So I wonder, I do want to be really process clean on this.
Yes.
So I'm just asking Sean, is there a way that, subject to legal feedback about privacy and otherwise, we can do it?
Yeah, look, I'd suggest that we add an addendum to the submission. We will get legal advice, but that addendum could probably be quite a generic summary of the mood of the input we get through social media and other contact points that we have, and include verbatim comments, but maybe not attributable.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure whether the select committee accepts comments that are not attributable at all, but we'll check that for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing a black pen couldn't fix, across the names.
Sure. So we'll check how we can treat that with our legal advisors.
And at risk of thrashing this horse, this is the kind of thing that we make our decisions on. Out of emotion, and it's the same as they will as well.
So I've had a chance to, I've been reflecting on it through the other questions, and I think we can definitely, I think we should go down this track, definitely, and then it just might be a case of offline tomorrow, we just look at the language that sits around that disclosure, but we can definitely put that in.
To make it squeaky clean, we get legal advice, but the intent of this council, I'm not hearing from anyone else, contrary, or they may debate contrary, is to include a warts and all look at what the public think, right?
Yep.
Maybe for you, Mayor Southgate, I would just like to add that, that is one of the reasons why we ran the two surveys. We ran the general survey, so it gave people the opportunity to say verbatim what they wanted to say. And so I think, as Tegan's pointed out, what we generally see is social media commentary is very much usually aligned to verbatim type surveys, so we can make that very clear that we are set in the general survey as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor, we're still in questions. Councillor Naidu-Rofe and then Councillor Maxine.
Thank you. Coming back to the submission, in the conclusion, point 21, can you please just explain that for me?
Just a minute.
Sorry, which one?
Point 21 on page 59.
Yeah.
Just that second sentence. My brain got a bit fuzzy towards the end, so just an explanation.
So, and I'm open to how this is worded, but so we have to have a conclusion, which is in paragraph 20. So council strongly opposed to the passing of the bill, and we're asking for it to be withdrawn. But then paragraph 21, and this was in my opening as well. There's a real risk here that the government receives our submission and carries on anyway. And so 21 saying, it's not saying that the technical submissions the city position or viable in any way. All it's saying is if you're going to proceed government, it will be irresponsible of us not to have a view on the bill in its current form. So that doesn't mean to say we agree with it. And so what we've done as a team is we've gone through a clause by clause to say, well, probably not the right language, but if this thing just proceeded anyway, what's good for Hamilton is a minimum viable product, and that's what the technical clause by clause analysis is. So it's not to detract from the substantive submission, but if this thing's going to happen anyway, there's still changes that are needed to the bill should government move with it.
So are the our recommended amendments that it mentions, is that in the attachment?
Yeah, so that starts on page 65 of Diligent. It's called Appendix A, Detailed Technical. So that goes through, and that's what Stephen was quoting from on pages 69 and 70 around the ownership rights, you know, and CCO models and things. So it's just a clause by clause. In the event that our submission is not upheld, and this thing's going to happen, and what are the minimum changes to make it viable from a city perspective? That's the intent of that. So that the risk is we go in and say we oppose, nothing happens, and the bill goes through, and then we're left with something that's very difficult. So we're trying to, as best as we can, have a view on the bill, but say we oppose it. And I'm open to a change in words if we haven't done a great job of that.
So I know you and your team have probably gone through that point for a long time already. So in your view, as you said, the submission's hard-hitting, withdraw the bill. Does that point then give government the option to say, actually, they could be open to it, or...
We can, following this meeting, we can strengthen paragraph 21 to make it clear that technical clause by clause analysis is not in any way to be seen as a city submission. We can make that clearer.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got, no, I haven't anymore. I thought, Maxine, you had a question. Gone? Okay, so we're going to get into, oh, sorry, I can't see the screen today.
This might be a difficult question, but I guess there's a broader political risk that we face with if this goes ahead, looking at an ambitious 18-month establishment period, but that could take longer. And then if there was a change of government and there was still at that point a will to repeal, I guess I'm just... where does that leave council in terms of dealing with a potential pivot in?
Well, it's not a great position, to be honest. You've got to prepare for two scenarios. So you've got to prepare for a water reform where there's 4 entities, and you've got to be prepared for BAU. So they'll take twice the energy, because you've got to do your conventional asset management plan and LTP prep for 2024 and all of those things. So, but Bill 1, should it go through, that it's going to become progressively more difficult to repeal, because certainly at Bill 2, which the government's got their program and that's proposed in October. I don't know when royal ascension of that bill will be. I suspect it'll be timetabled for before the national election. But if you look at current announcements, for example, there was an announcement yesterday around transition funding. That announcement's been made before submissions have closed. I'm expecting further announcements at the LGNZ conference this week. So, there's a lot of momentum behind this. I can't answer the question around whether it can be repealed or not, but all I can say is there's clear program in place to implement this thing, and as you get progressively down that path, my view is going to be progressively more difficult to repeal. Perhaps you could change the model. Perhaps that's what repeal looks like, and it becomes CCO. I don't know, but I'm just being very speculative. All I can do is respond to what's in front of us, which is the bill, which is a 4-entity model, and our advice and our community's view is it should be repealed.
Yeah, thank you.
If I could add to that, Chair, at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to do what we're required to do. This is like any divestment activity for any organisation, whether it's publicly listed or a private or a local government. We've got to actually prepare for both scenarios at the end of the day. We have to remember that we are responsible to deliver a really good waters product right through until whatever a handover date is or an alternative model date is. So irrespective of whether there's a repeal or not, we have an obligation to continue to deliver the best water service that we can possibly deliver, and that must remain intact all the way through. In terms of whether another alternative model comes up, then that's part of what we face, and we will find a way to make that work as well. But The issue, as Andrew has said, between now and an ultimate handover period, we have a lot of very challenging steps that are being taken, some way behind schedule on government's point of view, and some that are way ahead of it. So it's a challenging time.
May I just amplify one of Sean's comment? No matter what happens, we are accountable for the provision of water services until whatever the implementation date is. So the 24-hour period before go live, which is currently set out as 1 July 2024, we have to be responsible and ensure that water comes out of the tap and the toilets can flush and the system works. So no matter what happens with reform and the debate, and we are directly accountable as a council for the provision of those services until the implementation date clicks by. And so that has to be our core focus. We cannot let the community down.
So that's where the question, that's where the focus after the submission's gone on any discussion that we have about the finances and the transition money becomes quite critical to keep continuing having that debate and looking at the detail of that to make sure we get, is that right?
Yeah.
You done, Sarah? No?
Yes, just sorry. Finished on that question. The other one was just following up from Rob in terms of looking, I guess, at any further opportunities for political influence beyond, your minister or associate ministers. Is that something that will just be picked up kind of through the mayor office, or do we need to have any notes in that regard? In terms of staff notes or motions, or
I'm
just...
not sure I understood the question entirely properly, sorry.
So we discussed meeting with some select committee members.
Yeah.
Yep.
Look, I'll take direction from council, I think, on that, because obviously it's got to stick to the submission, because if we vote this through today, then we're in alignment, and that's what I should be reporting. Angela's, as chair of infrastructure, is a useful conduit and balance to that as well. So we can certainly try and set up those meetings and circulate what it is we would be feeding back based off this.
I think, yes, I think it's important that we just check certain protocols about contact with select committee members on issues independently, and once we have that advice for the mayor, then we'll pass that on, and it will be over to the political wing to act accordingly. Anyone can. My experience is that select committee members will normally shy away from contact because they have to have a clean process themselves. So they'll shy away from being lobbied on it, but that doesn't mean you can't influence the political arena more widely, and that doesn't mean I can't continue with my conversations with Minister Wood, with Minister Woods, with Minister Robertson, etc., which have been ongoing for the last year and a half on this matter. So, and any other minister that might be relevant who comes here for a reason. For another reason, obviously we want to shape their thinking. That's normal politics, isn't it? So happy to consider what opportunities are available to us. Angela.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was raised quite early on, Andrew, might have been from Councillor Bunting. I'm just wondering if we can, and you said it to Councillor Sarah's question around something about we would be doing a disservice to the community. We've gone out with feedback, and I'm aware of the conversation around whether we attach Facebook comments and all of the submissions, public submissions, etc. But can we, and you've done a really great job in terms of expressing our concern with the government around the lack of formal consultation time, but can we put up front in the letter, the Office of the Mayor's letter, and up front in some of the sort of exec summary parts that we have actually consulted, because I can't sort of see it. I think we went out to the public and we said we want you to give us your feedback to inform our submission, but we we've buried it in the detail.
Happy to do that. Very happy to do that.
Because the public, I mean,
Yeah.
on the face of it,
Good.
both
Yeah.
surveys, the public is supporting our view. So I'll leave it in your capable hands to word that up. But I just feel we are actually running a little bit of a disservice to the public.
Thank you for that suggestion. So,
Okay.
and I just have
So just to make sure I understand that, Angela, what would be the minimum requirement that you have on that? Because we aren't sanitising any of their feedback, but you're talking about...
No, we sort of have just, I think along with how we are criticising the lack of time and information to help us have formal consultation through the whole process, we've gone out and we've consulted for 2 weeks, but we've not really said that up front. I guess just what I'm looking for is we went out to the public, we said, we want your feedback to help inform our submission, but right up front in the first few pages of our submission, we're not in the letter to the from the Office of the Mayor, we don't actually say, and we went out for a small amount of time and the community supports our position.
Yeah.
So just to strengthen and give them some weight in our submission, rather than just attaching their feedback.
Yep, no, I get you, I
Does that
understand.
make sense? Yep.
Yeah, cross-referencing that, Andrew.
Yeah.
And actually, I guess you could word it both ways, Angela, maybe they're supporting our view or we're supporting their view.
Yes.
Andrew?
Yeah.
I had just a process question, if I may. So the resolutions are to approve the submission, that possibly just needs to be amended somehow so that we can update the submission based on the feedback today.
So we're going to take a tea break.
Okay, very good. Thank
And
you.
we're going to come back into debate. And I've had a couple of people who've expressed an interest in moving. I've got the additional one, which is just noting, and which may be captured into it, which is noting who will speak to the Select Committee, which will be the Chair of Infrastructure and the Mayor, depending whether it remains to be me and Angela or depending on the time frame, really, to be honest. Okay, let's have a adjournment. Make sure that the motion and everything else is good to go. You're going to move it, Councillor Hamilton? Okay, I'm happy to second. Can we? So it's 22 now. Let's give a goodly amount of time to get this all right and come back at 10 o'clock. Is that 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock? 11 o'clock. Can't see the clock. 11 o'clock. So like a long morning tea, 20 minutes. And then we'll be good to go because debate will, with everyone wanting to debate, it will be a reasonably long-ish debate. Just on that, in taking your lead, we have not suspended standing orders at this point to reduce debate to 5 minutes. I'm not sure how anybody feels like that. Do you want the full 5 minutes, councillors? Yes. Oh, it's already 3.
So would you like to suspend it to be 5?
Oh, do we want to make it bigger, longer?
Yes, we do.
Shouldn't have asked that question, Martin. All right, we'll make it five minutes because this is your chance, councillors. All right,
Absolutely. I not take it, but yeah, that's good.
All right, thank you.